Welcome back to the TV5 Same-Sex Marriage Forum. We are taking your phone calls, your tweets, your Facebook messages. We're going to get back to the phone calls now. And right now we have Kelly. And Kelly is from Corinna. And Kelly was raised by two moms. Hi, Kelly.
Hi. A little while ago you were talking about, the effect on the next generation as same-sex marriage is legalized. I'm 41. My brothers and I were raised by two moms. We had a very happy, loving, normal family life. And we've each grown up to be well-adjusted adults with successful careers and very loving families of our own. The only thing I can point to that was detrimental about the way we were raised isn't about the way we were raised. It was that we knew that we could not be legally recognized as a family. And I want to know, Carol, why it is you want to do that to another generation of kids, because they already exist. They're already being raised by same-sex couples. And I just want to know why you want to continue that.
Kelly, we recognize that for various reasons, either death or divorce or other circumstances occur, that the ideal can be diminished or may not have the advantage of having a mom and a dad. And the fact is that in our state, there are thousands of men that have the potential to be great dads. And there are, but I don't believe that any man can take the place of a mother's love. And I believe that there are moms in this, mothers in this state that recognize they're single moms. They know how important it is to have a mom and dad. They try to compensate. So in no way are we judging people that have been in another situation because they've been without without a mom or a dad. But we believe, and that time has told us that that we need to have the best way to make sure that our children have the best advantage is to have a mom and dad. Now, there are people who have overcome those obstacles, and we recognize it, but we're talking about as society at large and as a whole.
I don't know how Carol or anyone can just brush off that question and say that somehow that family situation that woman just described was less than ideal, or that it was a hurdle, or anything else. She sounded, and she said very clearly that she and her siblings grew up to be extremely well-adjusted, happy individuals living here in Maine, and that she credited the two moms with making that family structure work, and said that the actual only hurdle that they faced was their inability to be recognized as a real family, as a married family, and to have her two moms recognized as a married couple. That's what we're trying to remedy with this question one. If voters vote yes, the next generation, those families that are already living here in Maine, I mean, almost everybody in Maine knows someone who's gay or lesbian. And a lot of those people have probably spent time with a same-sex couple. And I want people to think about those people and think about the values that we all share of wanting to be able to affirm our love and commitment for one another, form a family, raise children if that's what they choose to do, and to have those children have all the protections that they need. And there are so many of them already living here in Maine beside us. There are neighbors, our friends, our colleagues. They're growing up here right now. Question one will protect those families and make them stronger and make all families more stable.
All right, we have a Twitter question that we're going to get to now. And that question is, how do you respond to Mark Muddy on tape saying that claims about marriage impacting what kids are taught in schools were untrue? That's from Nick on Twitter.
Actually, I just talked to Mark Muddy the other day, and I think Mark's, many of his comments were misconstrued. Mark has put out a statement in an op-ed that Mark believes absolutely, totally in traditional marriage and believes in the marriage between one man and one woman. This is an incredibly difficult campaign, and I'm sure Matt would tell you the same thing, that it's a consuming campaign. I think there are times that you get worn down, or that you say things that there may be aspects that you feel that should be focused on. I'm on the executive committee of this. When we vote and decide how our messaging is going to be, we don't necessarily agree with every single thing. It's not a unanimous decision when the three of us decide what the messaging is going to be. There were things that Mark did not necessarily agree with that still are not germane to his deeply held belief that the best thing for society that society can do is to make sure that marriage remains as the definition between one man and one woman.
Well, for any of your viewers who don't know, Mark Muddy is the person who ran the anti-marriage campaign in 2009, 3 years ago. And I don't think anyone is questioning that the statements he's made subsequently that are on YouTube, anybody could YouTube Mark Muddy and see the statements for themselves. I don't think anyone's questioning that he favors or opposes same-sex marriage. That's pretty clear. What he says on those comments, what the comments that the viewer who wrote in was talking about, are when he says that they used misleading attack ads and misstatements and basically exaggerated the truth. And this is his exact quote: beat Maine voters with over the head with a 2x4 with nails in it, and said things that were blatantly untrue about kids and schools and what this was going to mean. And so those are the comments that people are talking about. And I would say that we've seen those types of misleading attacks. I can assure you that when we sit down to do our messaging discussions and decide what ads we're going to use, all of our ads feature real Mainers talking about why marriage matters to their families. We don't have to have any unanimous votes or conflict decisions. All of us are always in agreement because we're talking about a very positive, very honest, and true message about how marriage impacts families here in Maine today.
I think it's really naive and frankly somewhat disingenuous to say that you don't have strategic conversations about what you put in. And that's exactly what we're talking about. The things you have to emphasize, the things that you have to make decisions about, and that's what takes place. And again, there are some times that Bob and I and Brian talk about this and we think this is more effective or that may be effective, not whether it's true or not whether it's...
well, you said Mark disagreed with some of the statements.
And he did disagree. And I don't always disagree with the verbiage. We work and we make a decision as a group. And again, in regard to the specific comments that Mark referenced, was every time that we talk about a consequence, a clear, real consequence in a state where this has already occurred, we're called fearmongers. We're talking about hitting people over the head. But if we have,
Carol.
I understand that. But I'm saying if we have a true, heartfelt conviction about what we think are serious consequences, and we did not state those, then we would not be acting in a responsible way. And so therefore, they can talk about things that are misleading. We have never had anything that we've said that is disproved or did not happen. They don't like the interpretation. They talk about whether they're causal or whether they're relational or not. We honestly and heartfully believe that those are true and need to be brought up in this campaign.
Okay, we're gonna move on to Mark. We have a phone call from Mark. Mark's from Searsport. Mark, what's your question?
Yes, I'd like to ask the people that are in favor of the same-sex marriage law, if it passes, will there be any protection for Christians with deeply held convictions that would prevent them from providing services such as renting a social hall or a photography session, or would they be willing to put anything like that into the bill in order to protect Christian values?
We've talked about this a couple times already tonight over the course of the evening. What this initiative actually does is allows marriage licenses for same-sex couples and adds additional protections that strengthen religious freedom for churches and clergy. Businesses are impacted by existing Maine law that was settled by Maine voters in 2005. Those businesses, if you choose to open a business, you have to serve anyone. You can't deny service to someone based on the color of their skin, because you don't like their gender, or because you don't like the fact that they're gay or lesbian. So you can't deny people services if you choose to open a business in Maine. Maine business owners have to follow existing Maine law that the voters themselves put in place 7 years ago. We haven't seen any increase at all. We haven't seen any challenges filed from businesses saying, well, I don't want to serve someone who's gay or lesbian. I don't want to put them up for their anniversary ceremony or their commitment ceremony or anything else. I think the people of Maine can respect one another enough to know that they can, if they disagree with it, they can let their disagreement be known to the client seeking those services. Likely, that client is probably going to go seek the services elsewhere, but they do have to follow Maine law. That's the nature of the law that was passed by voters in 2005.
There was a term that we use, a military term called collateral damage, and that's exactly what this is. Matt ignores the collateral damage. There will be people that find themselves, because again, he uses the term that this is just an additional service. We see marriage as something much more than just an additional service.
I'm talking about weddings being a service, Carol.
Not
marriage. Marriage is so much more than that.
It's not just something else that we add. We believe it's absolutely this. We believe this is the fundamental building block of civilization. And so therefore it needs to be treated with absolute care. It doesn't need to be treated recklessly. And so we have to believe that when we look at the absolute disregard for the religious liberties of these folks. And again, when we talk about what happened in Vermont, when we talk about what happened in Massachusetts, when we talk about what happened in Illinois, when we talk about what happened in Washington, D.C., every one of these occurrences happened in a state where marriage was redefined. And so to say that it has nothing to do with marriage and there's no collateral damage is false.
Well, we already talked about the example you raised, the Catholic Charities example of Massachusetts. That simply wasn't the case. That's been made very clear by the actual chairman of Catholic Charities as recently as today. And you consider to use the chairman who actually oversaw the situation at the time that happened, spoke very eloquently about that on a conference call today and in an op-ed that people can see for themselves. But again, we're talking about Maine law here when Carol talks about these businesses. I don't know what would you say? I mean, I'm a Catholic. If I was a business owner and I decided I didn't want to provide services to somebody because they were a Protestant, or because if I had a B&B and I didn't want to put somebody up because they were divorced, they'd been previously divorced, I didn't want to perform their next marriage because I didn't think that I disagreed with them getting divorced the first time around, what would you say?
20 seconds, because we have to get to a phone call.
Again, I would say that you are talking, if you don't think this is going to happen and you don't think it's a real concern of Maine people, continue to say that it doesn't matter. That's why they're calling in and asking this question, Matt.
All right, we're going to move on now. We're going to go to Bob in Brewer. Hi, Bob. What's your question?
Hey, if this marriage would become legal in Maine, can you file federal tax exemptions as a married couple?
Well, not yet, unfortunately. That's this. I mean, there's a law in place called the Defense of Marriage Act that says that even in the states where marriage has been legalized, the places like Massachusetts, New Hampshire, all of our New England neighbors, those couples, even though they're legally married in the state, cannot receive federal benefits of marriage. So at this point, if we pass marriage in November, if voters vote yes on November 6th, those same-sex couples will receive the state benefits of marriage, of civil marriage. If they can get a marriage license, they will not at this point get federal benefits.
Yeah, Matt's right. The Defense of Marriage Act, which was put forth by Bill Clinton, bipartisan, passed overwhelmingly, supermajorities, said that marriage would be between one man and one woman because the government recognized how important that was. And so therefore, a lot of the issues that are brought about by the proponents of redefining marriage, a lot of the issues they talk about in regard to tax benefits and Social Security and so on aren't going to change at all because those are issues right now. Now, unfortunately, the present administration has told the Department of Justice not to defend the present law, and we disagree with that, but there are many of those things that won't be changed because they are federal issues.
All right, we have a Twitter question now to get to. And that question is, why not civil unions for all couples versus marriage for all couples? That's from Andrew on Twitter.
I think that when you look at, for instance, a state like New Jersey has the most comprehensive civil union package in the United States of America that was put forth by, again, people working together from both sides of this issue. And then within a few short years, again, the proponents of redefining marriage came back and said, no, we're suing you because we want marriage and we want to be included in that definition of marriage. And so it's a moot point because the other side does not want that. I actually was, back in the late 90s, actually we were part of that conversation when this was coming about in our state, whether we should consider civil unions, but really it's a moot point because civil unions is not on the table. It's not part of the negotiation.
And we would say that marriage is much more than just a laundry list of rights and benefits. If that were the case, then there wouldn't be this big wedding industry. People want to actually be able to bring their family and friends together, the people that matter most to them, to be able to bring them together and say, we are legally married. We are willing to stand up and make a lifetime commitment in the eyes of our community, in the eyes of the law, and in the eyes of the people that matter to us most. Marriage in itself is something that everyone understands. It's a protection in and of itself, regardless of what laws you would include in a civil union or anything else. Alternatives to marriage fall short because marriage itself, Carol has said this numerous times tonight, it is this core stabilizing building block. It is the strongest commitment. It is the strongest recognition of a bond that society can confer on any couple, and we think it's something that should be encouraged, not discouraged.
All right, we're going to get to another phone call now, and we have Carol. Carol from Hallowell. Hi, Carol.
Hello.
Hi, Carol. What's your question?
Well, my question is that I know this is kind of a slippery slope, but I understand that NAMBLA, the North American Man-Boy Love Association, is a large contributor to the Yes on One campaign, and with the hope that once marriage is redefined, it's only going to be a matter of time for them to be able to marry children. How do you feel about that?
That is 100% false. I cannot state that more vociferously. Every one of our donations, every campaign donation we accept, every dollar we accept is public record. Anyone can go online right now to the Secretary of State's website. We certainly do not accept a dollar from any group like that. People can look for that for themselves, unlike our opponents who still shield their donors and refuse to say who funds their campaign. They're in fact suing the state of Maine right now. In fact, suing the nonpartisan Maine Ethics Commission to refuse to have to disclose their donors. Every single donor, every single dollar that we accept to fund this campaign can be found. It's public record. People can look it up right now for themselves on the Secretary of State's website. We believe that all campaigns should have to follow the same rules.
And I think Matt's right. I have no idea who their contributors are. I'm sure he's being open about that. It's interesting. I'm glad Matt brought up in regard to this. As far as the Ethics Commission, so we are in absolute compliance with their, what they require of us. When you look at the National Organization of Marriage, which is one of our large contributors, people talk about, wow, this large out-of-state organization. The National Organization of Marriage is an organization that goes about and defends marriage. And anybody that gives to a general fund of any organization is not required. And they're not honest about this. You are not required to expose that by law. We are following the law. But I will say, they talk about, well, we're not embarrassed about this. We expose our, donors and so on. The fact is, there are people in this state right now that are afraid to have their names aligned with us, because in 2009, when they made contributions, their businesses were attacked, they were attacked. I know a couple that is down on the coast of Maine whose business and website was attacked. Someone wrote red hot bigots across their business, and they have been under such scrutiny and bullying themselves that they are actually afraid of doing that. So they find organizations where they can make a contribution to, like the National Organization of Marriage, that does not necessarily go to the Maine campaign. It may go to the Washington campaign. It may go to the Minnesota campaign. And so there is a very, very good reason why we are following the law, but we are not required to expose donors. Now, anything that is given to Protect Marriage Maine absolutely goes in and is on the Secretary of State and on our PAC report, period. And we are following that law.
All right, 20 seconds, Matt, if you wanted to say
Carol
something.
just says, like, it sort of says that it's the National Organization for Marriage is a big donor. I mean, they've dumped millions of dollars. This DC-based group has dumped millions of dollars. They're the group that's suing the State Ethics Commission. Now, I don't know how you could say that they're completely upholding the letter and spirit of a law when you're actually suing the enforcing agency.
You have a right, obviously, to contend and to go to court if you don't agree with a decision that's been made by the commission. And so we are pursuing that, but we are in absolute compliance.
All right, we're going to go to another phone call. We have Kelsey from Farmington. Kelsey, what's your question?
Hi, I'm bisexual and my roommate is a lesbian, and we feel that we are made to be less of people because we're not allowed to marry whomever we choose. Can you please respond to that?
I think that it's interesting, again, that this debate is being put down, that the only way that you can make someone feel affirmed or that you don't hate someone is by, again, dismantling the basic building block of civilization. The fact is that we need to respect and we need to show compassion and love to everybody. But the government does have a role. Right now, Matt says that he believes in marriage equality for everybody, but he doesn't. Right now, the government does restrict people that cannot get married. As I said before, I cannot, just because I love somebody, I cannot legally marry someone. I cannot marry someone that's already married. I cannot marry someone that's a close blood relative. I cannot marry more than one person. The government has reasons for doing that. It's not because you don't hate, it's not because you hate somebody, it's not because you don't respect them, but the government has significant, specific reasons why it allows certain people to marry and others not to marry.
There are already tens of thousands of gay and lesbian people living here in Maine. I've said this again. There are thousands of couples living here already, people we know, family members, friends, and neighbors. If we allow those couples to say that if they're willing to make a lifetime commitment We think that those couples should have the freedom to marry, the ability to obtain a marriage license from the state. That's what this initiative does, and we're encouraging voters to vote yes this November.
All right, we're going to go to Facebook because we are running out of time, and this next question is, if we want to protect the sanctity of marriage, why not introduce legislation to outlaw divorce? Interesting question from Brian.
There is no question that there's a problem with marriage. Marriage has been weakened. When you look what's happened in the last 30, 40 years in our country, children have suffered because marriage has not been strengthened. And I think that's something we would both agree on. So when you look at divorce, I think we need to look at divorce and make it something that people should really seriously consider when they consider the effects of divorce on the people. But divorce is absolutely legal. I think just like anything else, there's a morality. There's some people religiously that don't believe in divorce. There's some that do. But you're not imposing your religious views when you make the case why you think divorce may not be a good idea. You're not imposing your religious or your moral values when you make the case why marriage has worked so well this time. And I think the implication is there that if you are for divorce or you're against it, somehow you're imposing your religious views on somebody.
We just think that couples should have that chance, that ability to affirm. I'm not sure why Carol's organization keeps on undermining us when we say that marriage should be about love and commitment. I actually think that if that's something that's reaffirmed, if people vote yes this November and affirm that marriage, all couples, all loving, committed couples, should have the freedom to marry the person that they choose, that's something that actually underscores that importance, that significance of making a lasting lifetime commitment. That's something that I actually think would make the institution of marriage as a whole much stronger. If you reaffirm that at its core, marriage should be about love and commitment. Lifetime commitment. I mean, they asked about divorce. I mean, we're talking about a lifetime commitment. There are thousands of same-sex couples that are willing to make that lifetime commitment. We hope that voters will vote yes and allow them the freedom to do so.
Matt is talking about the private aspect of marriage, which is love and commitment. But marriage also serves a public policy and a public good. And that's what we're referencing, because we don't vote on whether people love each other. What we vote on is in regard to the public good, and that's what marriage does, and that's why we believe that, again, historically, we have to look at how it has best benefited us when we have defined it as that timeless, that universal and special union between one man and one woman.
All right, very quickly, we have a Facebook question I can give you each about 30 seconds. With civil marriage, there are 1049 benefits, but with a domestic partnership, there are only 171 benefits. What do you think? That's from James. And seriously, you guys have 20 seconds each.
It's actually far, far less than the 171. Domestic partnerships in Maine provide seven benefits. Marriage is much more than just a list of benefits anyway. It really is about affirming love and commitment for all Maine families.
Yeah, there are over 1,000 laws, and you talk about all the benefits to marriage, to think that you can drastically and radically change the definition of marriage, and they're not going to be incredible changes. We have to look at that. When you look at that comparison, there are going to be significant changes.
All right, thank you both very much. Thank you so much for your tweets, your Facebook messages, your phone calls. We are sorry that we couldn't get onto everything, but we only had an hour here. We're going to go to a break, and when we come back, you will hear from each of these men once again. We'll be right back.